Hey everyone, me Kevin here with the latest on stimulus. The likelihood of a deal prior to the election, which is in 4 days, is now essentially zero. We certainly don't expect congressmen and women to have to work on the weekend to strike a deal. That would be terrible, especially with the Senate on vacation. However, we are starting discussions about whether or not a deal can be reached during the lame duck session of Congress, or we'll have to wait until February, which would be absolutely disastrous. And I think the Federal Reserve Chairman would roll over and die. Not that I hope he dies, but I do hope he has life insurance, which you can get in as little as 5 minutes via the link down below. Whew, transitions. Senator John Thune, the third-ranking member and Republican in the Senate, believes that the political stakes of negotiating a deal will be lower after the election. The Problem Solvers Caucus agrees and believes that tensions will simmer down after the election. This is because many Republicans believe that Nancy Pelosi does not want to cut a deal prior to the election. This is why she's holding firm. And they believe this because they think that Nancy Pelosi does not want to hand Donald Trump any form of a win and would prefer Donald Trump to suffer going into the election to help guarantee a Biden victory and then come to a deal in the lame duck session. However, this is raising concerns by many that why would Nancy Pelosi do a deal during the lame duck when she could just wait until January 21st and negotiate with potentially a fully Democratic House, Democratic presidency, and Democratic Senate in the event that they sweep, which we don't know that they will sweep, but that could be a possibility as to what she's holding out for. To get this answer, let's go ahead and listen to Nancy Pelosi and listen to exactly what she has to say about this. So let's go ahead and pull it up. Remember, you can still get 3 free stocks with Webull. Deposit $100. They will give you 3 free stocks worth up to $1,600. That does expire on Halloween. Let's get started with Nancy Pelosi.
Is there any realistic prospect really that this could get done in a lame duck session?
Well, I think so. I think that last weekend when the chief of staff to the president, Mark Meadows, said, we're not controlling the virus, he confessed that they never intended to do so, that they called it a hoax, that it was going to disappear miraculously.
I'm just going to pause there and say, obviously, this is very partisan, right? Republicans would say, hey, look, we're doing everything we can, but the reality is this virus is so pervasive and the death rate is so low, maybe it's not something that's meant to be controlled until there is a vaccine. And Mark Meadows has sort of reiterated those comments, so he still stands by those comments, though obviously it came across as potentially not so wise to say right before the election. Either way, that's what she's referring to here.
Magically, and the rest. And what has happened? People have died. And so, again, that recognition that they have surrendered to the virus and we are not, we're there to crush it. Now we can go to the table with a clear understanding in the public mind as to what we need to do. And I had hoped that we could at least have an agreement before the election, but they have not ever responded to. The secretary and I will come to a place of, all right, this is where we could be.
It's interesting that Nancy Pelosi is still hopeful that Steve Mnuchin will roll over and take her deal. And remember the letters that we had yesterday, they were disastrous. Steve Mnuchin's response to Nancy Pelosi is basically the most bitter we have seen any relations between Nancy and Mitch. I mean, it was almost as bad as a breakup.
Never gotten back. 2 weeks ago today, the secretary said that they were willing to accept our testing language with a light touch in the language. The light touch happened to be erasing 55% of it, largely and communities of color who are dying at a higher rate than people who are white. You've heard me say over and over, children who are Black or Hispanic have more, 5 to 8 times more possibility of going to the hospital with COVID than white children. So they erased all of that. I don't know, it doesn't make sense. So now we're saying, okay, you confessed to not controlling it. You understand that we must. Just give us an answer as to whether you agree that we must follow a scientific path, or we're going to continue to go down the quackery path that the president has taken us thus far. So we've sent him a letter, which you've probably seen, just said, here are just some of the answers we're expecting. We don't expect them all to be in our favor, but we do expect them to establish a place where we can weigh the equities and come to compromise and negotiate so that
And keep in mind, obviously, we addressed both of the letters, her letter and Steve Mnuchin's reply yesterday. You could check out those videos. But one thing that I will say that really has me concerned, and I tweeted Steve Mnuchin asking him for clarity. Of course, he didn't reply. He honestly, never replies to anyone. He comes on and posts and leaves. But the point is, he says, we have worked with committee chairs to send you detailed compromise responses. But they're not actually saying that they did send any compromise responses. So, in fairness, if they sent a compromise response, in Steve Mnuchin's letter, he would have said, hey, on Monday we sent you this. On Tuesday we sent you this. Here's a copy of what we sent you. Nancy Pelosi might be right in that, as much as I hate saying it because, I'm pissed at all of them. I don't want any of them to be right at all. She might be right in that, you haven't said anything yet. Come on, Mnuchin, get it together and send her something. That's my POV here based on reading both of their letters. And remember, that's not me taking any sides here. This is looking at this letter. And you ask yourself this. When somebody says, we have also worked with agencies and committee chairs to send you detailed compromise responses on the following items. Does that mean they actually sent a response? And after all, if they did send a response, wouldn't he have said, we sent you, and when we sent you, he would have made that public. So I don't think anything's been sent. Let's keep going.
We can go forward. And yes, I do think that the president has said we would have an agreement after the election. Of course, he's predicating some of that on the Republicans taking back the House. You just keep thinking that, Mr. President. But is as delusional as you have been in your approach to the coronavirus?
So thus far, we know that Nancy Pelosi is open to getting a deal done in the lame duck. Let's get a little bit more information, though, on what her response is to those GDP numbers that came out yesterday. We know they're multiplied by 4. That 33.1% figure is a 4x figure of what actually happened, the change between quarters. We came out from a very low place, we're in a higher place. But did this GDP figure change Nancy Pelosi's calculations on whether or not we're going to do stimulus at all? Let's listen to that.
Today we got news about the GDP numbers in the United States, which were a record up. They were up 33%. Does that make you think maybe we may not need the stimulus quite as much as we did?
Great question.
No, in fact, it is proof that we need the stimulus even more so. The reason we had a better second quarter than was a better third quarter is because what we did in the CARES Act and the following subsequent legislation for PPP that put money into the economy. Now people are coming, that's going to wear off and we need another infusion. So
I think that's already worn off, but I see what she's saying.
It's not a question of we don't need it. It's a question of it proved that it worked and now we need it more. But understand that what happened in the second quarter was so horrible. You know that. So we've come part of the way back from that, and we have to keep on a path of going forward rather than sliding back by not having another COVID injection of funds into the economy.
So I'm very curious because you have such an important say in the economy and how it's governed, where it goes. How do you make sense of the numbers? Because, as I say, the GDP number really came back strongly. The stock market, although it's down this week, actually has been doing fairly well over the last few months. At the same time, we have 11 million people still unemployed. We still have stories of people having extreme difficulties. Do we have two economies going on in this country?
Well, let me just
And this is obviously a reference to that classic K-shape we keep hearing about, right? That we've got the people making under $40,000 disproportionately hurt and affected by this, where wealthier individuals who are buying stocks or buying real estate are benefiting substantially from the stimulus much more than individuals are.
That the number I think that is staggering is that we have more people unemployed and more people on unemployment benefits than any time in our country's history. We know that the Fed is shoring up the market so that the stock market can do well. I don't complain about that. I want the market to do well. But just because we've come back some points this morning does not negate the fact that we're, almost 1,900 points down for the past 4 days. So the Fed is reacting to the fact that the virus is spreading. The Fed is reacting, the markets are reacting to the fact that the virus is spreading. It's reacting to the fact that there is no agreement to inject the resources necessary to support the lives, the livelihood, and the life of our democracy, as I say over and over again. So we do need that public role once again. Right now, and when we need it for state and local government, according to the Wall Street Journal, said that this is the biggest cash crisis for the states and local governments since the Great Depression. So there.
And this is one of the big pushes for the state and local government pay. And she's right that the Federal Reserve, while it's not their intention to push the stock market up, that's pretty much what they do. They do the trickle-down economics where they basically give cheap lending to businesses. And the theory is that maybe that'll trickle down to the worker, but it rarely does. Businesses have been laying off jobs like crazy. It's really not fair that we haven't seen stimulus. Okay, so out of these videos, we got a couple things from Nancy Pelosi. One, that she's willing to do a deal during the lame duck, and that we need a stimulus bill, especially because of the GDP figure that came out, because she says the GDP figure is the reason, or is based on the stimulus that we had. And this is why we need more stimulus, because it's worn off. Now, in other negotiations, Nancy Pelosi has also stated that she needs to get a stimulus package done during the lame duck session rather than wait for Joe Biden to become president, because she says, quote, there will be enough to do once Joe Biden is president. On COVID, we are now at 90,728 cases, which is a 42% increase over the last 14 days. Deaths are at 1,004, a 16% increase over the last 14 days. Now keep this in mind too, testing is up 9%, but cases are up 25%. So we're getting an increasing positivity rate, and the more people have COVID, obviously the more people are going to end up in the hospital and sadly passing away, even with a lower fatality rate. So we have large issues here. On the vaccine front, we're realistically not expecting mass distribution of a vaccine, at least not even until seniors, until maybe January, February, March, and the rest of the population potentially in the summer of next year, if you're even interested in taking it. That's what I've got for you. Get your life insurance, get your 3 free stocks. Thanks so much for watching, and folks, we'll see you in the next video with another update.